Anyway, we're going to do a short video on height, width, and depth cancellation. Hopefully we can get an understanding of those dimensions and how to utilize them within the Kenpo system and how to cancel your dimensions and destroy their ability to interact with you. I got Nick here. We're going to take the first one, height, as it's generally said, height, width, depth. There's three words, or in 3 words or less, you can describe how to cancel height. That's up or down. It really is that simple. Let's take a typical technique, lone kimono. He grabs. The first thing I want to do is first pin, but now let's talk about the dimensions. He's got available every dimension, hands, feet, depth, height, width. I've canceled nothing. So what I want to do is, first, when we're talking about height, I'll talk about width and depth in just a minute in this technique. I'm going to step back and put weight, pulling forward and put weight on this, and that momentarily cancels his height. That's your down portion of it in the first part. Now I'm going to come up underneath his arm, right behind his elbow, and bring it up on his toes. And this, obviously, is going to start canceling the legs as well. So I'm not concerned at this point about getting kicked, so I can do whatever I want in my upper quadrant and not have to worry about that lower quadrant. Now, there's up. Now we're going to go with the down. Now, there's variations on how you do this technique, what happens, whether you release the hand or whether you keep the hand. And honestly, it's all in what you're ready to do or capable of doing that determines this. So in this respect, just so we can keep it within the height dimension, I'm going to come down and bring his body and put weight again on this forward leg so I don't have to worry about it kicking me. Okay? I can come back. So that's kind of your basic explanation of height in 3 words or less, up or down. It's that simple. You don't have to worry about kick the knee or kick them in the balls. If you just think about taking your opponent up or down, that's going to cancel their height. Now we're going to talk about the width dimension. The width dimension, hands, feet, okay, everything's available within the upper and lower quadrants. Now, when we talk about width, we're talking about splitting down this center line here or your horizontal center line, okay, which I can go back and forward, okay. That will also cancel height and width simultaneously sometimes. But let's go back to lone kimono again. As he grabs, he's got his hand available and he can reach me. So from this point, I want to pin, obviously, so I can use my mass now. Now there's only 4 ways, well there's more, but the 4 unique ways to cancel width are pushing, pulling, joint locking, or mirror imaging. And I'll go into a bit on that in a second. So right now, we pin and we pull. That's that first one, we pull. And what that does is now removes that ability to strike with that furthest hand and that furthest foot. So in this technique, the first thing we're doing is we're getting that width canceled by pulling. Then we want to bring them up. Then we want to bring them down. And again, keeping that width in check. And then we do our chop. Okay? So by either pushing, cancels that half of the body. Whether we pull, cancels that half of the body. Okay? Joint locking can be done really from any appendage. But, well, let's just take simple, finger grabs. Oh, you popped. Okay? Finger grabs. Now, I can do this way and get width, but I can also do it to cancel height, and that gets him, again, up. Okay? So we can be multi-dimensional with what we're using as either weapons and or joint locks. Okay? And then the other one is mirror imaging. If he goes into a right fighting stance, and I take a mirror image to him in a left, we're both limited in range as to what we can do. Even though we can make contact with our forward hands, it limits our range in that aspect on the back side. If I do this, then we're still kind of close in and we can hit. But as soon as I switch, it eliminates that. Now, that doesn't say that you can't adjust that limit and turn that, okay? But for the moment, that brief moment when we're in the technique and we want to cancel that width, that's what we want to see. We want to see that half of the body away from us. So we only have this side of the body to deal with. Now, when you're talking depth, I look at it in the 4 ranges. And it's not the out of control or out of range, within range, contact penetration and contact manipulation. I look at it as long range weapons, which are the kicks, okay? The mid range weapons, which are hands and arms. Then we look at our short range weapons, elbows and knees, and then our 4th range, which is in grappling range, which is headbutting and biting range. And you don't want to be in that range. So you want to control that depth as much as you can throughout the technique without sacrificing height, width, or depth. Now, the last dimension we want to cover is time. And what I mean by that, and this is something my instructor has railed on forever, is when we cancel 3 dimensions, we get a 4th dimension, and that is time. If we take lone kimono, and he's ready to swing, and I step away and move that, then I've got time now, because I've got height, width, and depth, because now I got him away and moved away, okay? I've got time now to do what I intended to do to begin with and work within the framework and the parameters of the technique in its ideal phase. I bring him up. I still keep that width checked. Now I've got his height checked. And I've still got this depth checked. Mainly because once I pin, I stay in control. Now, a lot of people will teach different things for this technique. When they grab, essentially they're attempting to control your depth and your movement. When we step back and pull them in, now we've got them at our mercy, more or less. And I get him up, okay? I get him down, and then I chop. Okay? So time is what happens when all 3 dimensions are canceled. And I like to call it destruction of dimensions. It's really what you're doing is you're destroying that dimension, even if it's just for a millisecond, in order to gain time to, and this is what I call arming, which is adjust, regulate, monitor, or modify. And we have time to adjust our stance, our position, our height, our depth. We can adjust within that cancellation that we've just created. We can adjust, we can regulate our speed, our time, our breath, our strikes, how we want to hit, our power. Then we have monitor, which means at this exact moment I'm canceling dimensions. I monitor by touch. Okay, if I start doing this and he pulls back suddenly, then I just continue that because I've monitored where he's adjusting me. He wants to adjust. I'm going to adjust with it, but I'm also going to bring a dimension canceller with it. Okay? So I monitor, not only physically, but mentally and perceptually what he or she is doing. I look at the whole situation. Once I get to this point and I start to go here, I'm monitoring this entire spectrum of their pattern. And that's the other thing we want to talk about within the context of height, width, depth is, by doing that, you're taking them out of their universal pattern while maintaining your own. So once I have them removed from the pattern, then I'm more or less free to do what I choose to do. But I have to arm, I have to adjust, regulate, monitor, and modify if necessary, which is what I showed before, is if I get this, I don't get this in skin and he pulls in, then I immediately have to do something to correct that. Okay? So hopefully this is a value that you're going to find useful. That if it's something you didn't understand, maybe you have a better grasp of it now. And we'll see you in the future.